Hi, I'm Greg.
And I'm Leanne,
Welcome to Empowered Now.
where we save humanity
One relationship at a time.
We all struggle from time to time connecting with and understanding others and ourselves.
So we hope to encourage you to live a more authentic and empowered life by sharing what we've learned as coaches and as individuals.
Empowered Now is LGBTQ2IA, alternative lifestyle, poly, and kink friendly.
Thanks for joining us
And enjoy the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 6, The Truth About Self-Love. So we came across this topic, recently in an article that we both read by Lisa Voth, and also you were saying multiple times in your life.
Yeah, it's come up a lot in my life. And the idea that you can't love somebody else without loving yourself first is bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about many people, but I don't feel like I love myself most days, but I feel like my capacity and ability to love is quite expansive. I love you very much, and I love the people in my life. I love my children. I love my grandchildren. I love my family. I love my friends. I believe that I'm capable of beautiful and magnificent amounts of love, but when it comes to myself, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things in this article that Lisa Voth talks about is this idea that the concept of self-love is a myth. That you have to do all the work yourself. It doesn't work that way, right? Self-love is a byproduct. This is a quote from her, of connection with other people.
Well, and we know that from psychology. We know that from, childhood development, right? And the studies have shown that when someone is neglected as a young, foundational being in the world, they are impacted for the rest of their life in terms of how they view themselves, how they value themselves,
Right,
right?
exactly.
When their needs are met, when they're held, when they're allowed to explore, but then return to safety, that gives them that base from which to function and be part of the world.
So does that mean then, though, that if you don't have that your ability to love is somehow less than?
I would say it might be hindered, but that through other examples, right? Through observation of others from, a very young age, looking at those functional relationships in our lives and saying, hey, that's what love looks like. That's what it feels like to be around. I can recognize these people are attending to each other's needs, right? Even if it hasn't happened to you directly, I feel like observational powers build skills, right? So as we go through our lives and we see those relationships around us that work and that have that going on, we can aspire to that. We can emulate that behavior and treat our partners that way.
Right. And not only that, but our experiences too, as we get older and stuff, and we fall in love for the first time, and we have these connections with other people that bring up the butterflies and the silly willies and all of the feelings that come along with that, right? I think the idea that we can't truly, really, right, really love ourselves, I'm using in quotes, really love ourselves, without loving ourselves. Sorry, we can't really love other people without loving ourselves first. I don't understand it, because I don't know anyone personally that doesn't struggle on some level with loving themselves in some way, in some area of their life. Maybe their professional life is fantastic, but they don't like the way they look, or maybe they love the way they look, but their ability to relate to other people. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's perfect. And in fact, I think imperfection is love, and love is imperfect.
Yes.
I really do. And I think the real ultimate kind of love, at least for me anyway, in my experience, that I've had, the kind of love that really makes me feel like I am connected to other people and to myself, is the vulnerable kind. Right? When we aren't perfect, when we don't feel like we got our shit together,
You mean like me today? I don't feel like I have my shit together at all.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly. And our ability to be present for other people when they're
Hmm.
struggling and when they're challenged, right? That's, that's part of conscious relating, and that's part of being aware and mindful. But that doesn't mean that you love yourself all the time. And
Hmm.
maybe I'm misreading this. Maybe I'm thinking that, that it is an all or nothing thing, and maybe that's a bit much to
Well,
expect.
there could be some semantic issues here with language, right? Like that's one of the problems that we
Yeah.
bump up against a lot is that we're using terminology that, maybe in application is a bit different. So for example, the fact that you are willing to accept imperfection in others and in yourself is a kind of self-love, right? You're saying, okay, I accept that I'm not perfect, that I screwed this up, that I messed up that relationship, that didn't go well, but I forgive myself and I'm moving forward. Maybe that's a kind of self-love that you have the soft skills for, right? They're
Mhm.
already embedded in you. Or maybe
Right.
that only happens on good days,
Yeah, I was going to say
right?
that's not an easy process, and in fact, I don't feel like it's I don't feel oftentimes that I feel like I'm very much harder on myself than I am on other people, and the level of expectations that I have of myself are much
Yeah.
higher than they are than from other people, for sure. So when you say things like, what comes up for me when you just said that was that, yeah, I don't forgive myself that easily, actually. I forgive other people much easier than I forgive myself.
Hmm.
So does that mean that my love is somehow less than somebody else who forgives other people easier or forgives themselves? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a
Yeah,
comparative narrative, I think.
a
Some,
comparative narrative.
yeah.
I don't think that it's I don't think that your love, your ability to love is necessarily less than, but I can see how for some people, not you, but for some people who, you know, struggle to connect even, right? That they would be hampered, that their, kind of experiences, foundational experiences with their foundational relationships hampered their ability to feel connected, to actually want connection, even to
Mhm.
trust connection,
Mhm.
right? And so that doesn't necessarily mean that they love in a way that isn't fabulous and fantastic, but it might be that they love in a way that is um, withholding or distant or safe for them, whatever that
Mhm.
looks like, you know.
Right.
Um, I've been in love with a few people like that. So
Mhm. Right.
pretty sure I know that exists in the world. And so when you're saying, does that make your ability to love someone else less than just because you struggle to love yourself? I don't experience that from you. I bump up against some things that you need for self-care, right? That maybe kind of, you know, keep me from getting certain things that I want from you. Like, for example, spending time together when you're in self-care mode and you want to be alone. That can be hard, a hard pill to swallow as a partner, right? But I see that as self-love.
Mm.
So you're doing the thing that your body is asking for, your heart, soul, and mind are asking for. And did that come from, some trauma? Maybe not. Maybe you would have been the same person anyway. But you have your own theories about that, I'm sure.
I do. I do. That's it's some wonderful insight, by the way. Thank you.
Hmm.
Um, I think for me, when you were talking about, certain people struggle with loving or showing affection, um, and stuff like that, I think maybe I just I feel a little scatterbrained today because I'm all over the map with this self love um, idea that you have to love yourself before you love others. And I've struggled with it my whole life because ultimately it feels shaming.
I agree.
Ultimately, that's what I feel is I feel shame
Mm-hmm.
when I hear that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel, and you mentioned earlier semantics, and somebody said to me the other day that somebody I had just met for the first time um, said to me the other day, she's like, language is very important to you, isn't it? I was like, yeah, it is absolutely important to me. And so this is one of those things that's important to me because of the language of the message. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
black and white message. You can't love somebody else until you love yourself. That's a black and white statement. And it's a very, and I get that I
Mm-hmm.
get the intent. I get that it's trying to be empowering. I get that the idea here is that in order to truly be able to be effective as a partner, there are elements that you need to work on yourself through, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're an island, for instance, right, using the, what were they called,
Okay,
the
wait, we haven't got
yeah,
to those yet.
well I'll mention them. So um there are blueprints. What are they called?
Relational Blueprints by Stan
Relational,
Tatkin.
yeah, relational blueprints. And so there's the anchor, the wave, and the island. And I know you'll come back, circle back, and kind of fill
Mm-hmm.
us in on what those three mean. But if you're an island, for instance, and I think the island is pretty self-explanatory. If
Yeah.
you're an island, you have challenges and difficulties reaching out to other people because of trauma and, like you said, those relational experiences that you had as a child or even as an adult, right? So you do the work internally first, I think. And it's true with everybody, regardless of where you fall, regardless of what your attachment style is, what your relational style is, doesn't matter. The work starts internally and we have to do the work ourselves. So I think that's the crux of the message, is that's the foundation of the message, is that in order for you to really truly connect with other people, you have to be open to connecting to other people. You have to be willing to be vulnerable and to be transparent and to be honest and to be open and to show your full self, right? But that requires imperfection.
That's very scary.
I know, right? It is scary as fuck. But the
Oh.
reality is that it requires imperfection. It requires us to be imperfect. So
Mm-hmm.
so when you go back to when I circle back to the language of those messages, one says that you have to be perfect, or at least that's the language of the message. And the other is that it's the exact opposite. You have to be imperfect because we're all imperfect. We all
Mm-hmm.
have shitty days. We all have days where we don't feel love. We all have years, decades where we don't feel loved, or we don't love
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, or we hate the way we see our, whatever your challenge or your struggle is. But that doesn't mean that you don't love and that you can't truly, really love somebody. And that's maybe the problem is that truly and really piece.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I have some pretty strong opinions about this.
You think?
I wonder why that is.
I wonder, Mr. Island. So
No, I'm a wave, I'm telling you.
you're a
So
wave.
anyway,
Okay.
why don't you read those out? Just kind of
Sure,
give the
sure,
audience
sure.
a bit of a
Okay.
background.
There are three basic categories by Stan Tatkin for the relationship blueprints. The first is the anchor. I feel generally secure in relationships and am comfortable with a mix of closeness with others and exploring new things on my own. When I was little, I was able to find warm closeness with others, and I was allowed to discover and assert my own independence. I talk about self love now and again, but it's not all that hard to feel. I think one of the defining pieces in these definitions is how much you talk about self-love or how much it matters to you in your navigation of life. So that's why that piece is in there.
How much you talk about it, how much it matters, how
Hmm.
aware of it you are, you mean? Like how
Hmm.
conscious you are of it?
So there's sort of the two extremes where, the person who is the anchor, who feels very confident in relating and in their independence, doesn't really address self-love that much, right? It comes up now and again, but it's not really something they're seeking, or they wouldn't take a class on self-love. They wouldn't probably read an article, they're not
Is that
looking for
ba-
information.
Is that because they why is that, you think?
Well, I would theorize that that's because they intrinsically have a knowing of it.
Okay. So they're conscious and aware of it. It's there. It's not
Hmm.
something that they need to work on
Hmm. Or
often.
they only need to work on it occasionally.
Right. Okay.
Their interest in it is sporadic. So as the wave, I am unsure in relationships and have a hard time settling and feeling safe. I am constantly vigilant and attending to the closeness in a relationship, often feeling that I can't get my emotional needs met. And as a result, I have a hard time exploring and figuring out what's important to me outside of relationships. When I was little, closeness with others was inconsistent, and therefore I had to work really hard at creating it and managing it. My definition of self love may be that I have to work hard at it and that it's not very reliable. I have to prove myself to myself in order to earn it. So that kind of like self praising would only happen if something really amazing happened or was accomplished.
Right. I identify as a wave. Like I think that's where I
Hmm.
fit squarely in, is the wave, is the idea of constantly having to prove to myself that I'm
Worthy.
worthy of love,
Hmm.
that my abilities, my not just my intrinsic existence, but my abilities are worthy of love, right?
Right.
Because as a child, I mean, not to get into too much detail, but as a child, it was inconsistent,
Hmm.
very inconsistent for me. And so I wasn't really, I didn't see that a whole lot. I didn't see a whole lot of closeness between family members. Um, and I didn't feel a lot of love from family members, certain family members, not all, but again, there's that inconsistency piece, right? There were some people that I
Hmm.
didn't spend as much time with that I felt really loved by, but there were other people that I spent more time with that as a child I didn't feel loved by. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
And so as an adult, I understand that everybody loved me in their own way and was doing the best they could with the tools they had. But even saying that as a caveat in this, still there's that vigilance piece,
Sure.
right? There's that vigilance piece. So the wave
Hmm.
thing definitely resonates with me.
I think I'm between an anchor and a wave, but I'll come back to that. I'll just finish up here with the island. The island. I am scared of people getting too close and swallowing me. I like to do my own thing and I resent interruption. I want closeness, but I'm also nervous about it. When I was little, closeness from others was rarely there, and it was hard to get my emotional needs met. Therefore, after a while, I learned it wasn't possible and quit trying. I focused on being independent and not needing others. And as I was taught, this need was wrong. My definition of self love may be that I don't really have time for it, that it's selfish, and that people that need stuff like that are weak. I keep busy doing things. So this person has awareness of self love, but in a kind of dismissive way, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's not something they're seeking necessarily. Although I could see some people as islands also being caught in that, okay, maybe it feels selfish to do self love work, but also wanting to do self love work, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so the more aware they are of how that um, messaging has impacted them, they could want to, participate in that. And this, I just want to put this out there that self love work or self care or self improvement or self development, all of these things are not bad. These are not bad things. We're not saying that. But what we're saying is we're arguing the messaging of you can't meaningfully engage in loving relationships without first loving yourself. That's what we're talking about here today. We're
Right.
not saying
Exactly.
all self love work is bad.
Oh, no, in fact, I think self-love work is good. I, I think most of us on some level at some point in our life, wherever we are, attachment style wise or relational wise, have
Hmm.
needed to do the work on some level.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I think it's important to understand that there's value in that work.
Hmm. Yes.
And if you find yourself, if you're listening to this and you're saying, you know what, I'm an island, or I'm a wave, or I'm an anchor, and you're still finding areas in your life that you need to work on, as far as maybe you need to be a little bit more self-compassionate, or maybe you need to have a little bit more self-respect, or whatever it is, right? That's okay, and that's part of self-work. The reality, though, is that I think we take umbrage with the idea that it has to be an all or nothing idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order to really or truly love somebody, you have to love yourself
Mm-hmm.
first,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And
That's the
there's so much sort of passing through our social media and our even our fiction, um, that sends that message repeatedly, right?
Mhm.
That, you know, you need to go over there and do the work. But when we're talking about self-love and love, um, it's it's hard to accomplish this in a vacuum. It's hard to do this out there, right? Ostracized, alone. It's
Well,
difficult. It's
I
not
would
that it can't be done. I'm just saying it's difficult.
I would suggest that it's nearly impossible to do in a vacuum.
Hmm.
I mean,
Well, I
no?
wonder. I don't know. I've got a couple of theories floating around. Like if I lived on a desert island by myself, could I experience self-love if I was an anchor?
No, what I'm saying though is that so if you lived on that island by yourself,
Hmm.
right? For X amount of time, let's say 5 years, and you became completely independent, completely self-sufficient, and then all of a sudden somebody comes along.
Hmm.
How are your skills and abilities at being connected to that person? How will they have changed?
I might just jump on them and give them a big hug.
Or
Five
or
years,
you
man.
might or you might run behind a tree because you've been alone for 5 years and you don't trust anybody. You're completely, I mean, one of the interesting things
Mm.
is the island definition has the word independent in it,
Hmm.
but none of the
Yeah.
other ones do. I don't think
Mm.
anyway. So this idea of being independent, right? It's I mean, I had a friend once that said that true independence is impossible
Mm. Interesting.
because we're all interdependent on something or somebody else. Right? Even on that island, you're still not independent. You still need
Hmm.
something else. You still need sustenance. You still need shelter. You still need the trees around you or the vegetables around you, et cetera, right? In order to be
Hmm.
able to live and to breathe you need the air around you. So the idea of true, complete independence isn't isn't possible. So if you're living on that island by yourself and you've developed this massive amount of self-love and independence and resilience, and then all of a sudden somebody comes along, you might have one of multiple different reactions. You might jump on them and say, oh my God, it's so wonderful to see you, I can't believe it. Oh yeah, by the way, who are you and why are you here? Right? Or you might have the exact opposite reaction, which is you might want to run and hide because now
Hmm.
you're in a protective mode because you don't trust people anymore because you've been alone for so long.
Or you
Right?
might be a wave and you might be in kind of in the middle of like, hey,
Yeah, you
hi,
might
how
be
are you? But I don't want to get
you
too
might have
close.
yeah, you might have your spear, with you, and you might be picking it out, going, all are welcome here, but you've got to tell me what brings you here. So you might be guarded and stuff, right?
Hmm.
You might be somewhere on that spectrum. But the point is that you've done the work,
Hmm.
but real, real. So I'm trying to avoid that language. But conscious connection requires other people,
Hmm.
right? Expansive love, doesn't it require other people? Doesn't it require community? Doesn't it require
Hmm.
us to be connected to other people around us?
Hmm.
And isn't that where that phrase comes from? Is this idea that you can't really truly be meaningfully connected and in love with somebody unless you love yourself first, right?
Right?
So being on the island,
Is an artificial existence that doesn't really occur naturally. And so what you're saying is in relationship to others, We often react based on how much we, I don't know, value ourselves, feel independence. Anchors are noted as being independent too. I think that that's an important thing. You said there were no other definitions that had independence in them, but anchor does mention that there is a sense of
They assert
independence.
their own independence. Yeah, you're right. You're correct.
Hmm.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
stand corrected for sure.
so I'm trying to follow what the point was that you were making. So on that desert island, that's an artificial uh, existence, right? That wouldn't
Right,
occur naturally usually.
right. We're
Um,
talking about this idea of going off and doing the work ourselves. And you mentioned that,
And so that's kind of the metaphor.
yeah, exactly. And you're going off onto an island and you're going to do all this work by yourself, and then you're going to
Journal
come
for
back.
5 years.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to come back into society, right? I mean, kind of like
Mhm.
what we're struggling with right now with the pandemic, right? A lot of us are at
Good
home.
point.
A lot of us
Yes.
are disconnected from our friends and our family, on a physical level, and maybe on
Hmm.
an emotional level too. And I think that physical connection feeds directly into our capacity and our ability to love. And maybe that's
Hmm.
my point. And I'm taking a very circuitous route around to it, but you get my point. Is that in order for us to ultimately, my point is, in order for us to love, I feel we have to accept the imperfections.
Hmm.
We have, because love is imperfect, right? And so, at the risk of sounding redundant or at the risk of repeating myself, the language around that message, I think, is more harmful than it is
Hmm.
helpful.
Feeds into that toxic positivity that we really need to get a handle on sometimes.
Well, and it's black and white, isn't it?
Hmm.
Right? I mean, it's pretty
Well, and
black and
and
white.
yeah, and the people that really believe this say it in such a definitive manner. I mean, I've been witness to the debate between you and another person on this matter, and was struck by how impassioned the other person was. You have to love yourself. Okay, but do you? I think that's kind of optional and and fluctuates, right? Like I'm feeling a little weird today. I'm a little tired today. I'm a little like not with it today. Um, am I feeling like I'm bathing in self-love? No. Feeling less like an anchor, more like a wave, a little insecure about myself and how I'm presenting even in this, right? So this is today. Tomorrow I might be really solid. I might be feeling great. And the day after I might be feeling more like an island, more like I just don't even want to bother connecting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the idea of definitiveness, right? That black and whiteness, the must do's. I feel like that's where it gets problematic.
Hmm.
And for someone who doesn't feel self-love, to hear that messaging repeatedly puts them in a place of, well, I will never find someone to love then because I don't love myself,
Hmm.
right? But even in receiving love, we're taught that we're worthy. We're taught that we're worthy of our own love.
Right. And she talks a little bit about that too, in this idea
Hmm.
that, we develop our ability to love from not only seeing it and being witness to it, but also from experiencing it from others, and oftentimes in our lowest points,
Hmm.
right? Like if somebody continues to show up for us over and over and over again, whatever that relationship looks like, whether it's a friendship or it's a romantic relationship or it's familial, doesn't matter. We
Hmm.
start to believe that person actually cares about us, and so that helps us care about ourselves a little bit more, right? And so it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't happen on an island, right?
Hmm.
It happens over time with trust and vulnerability and allowing that imperfection to show up and seeing the imperfections in other people, right? And realizing, hey, wait a minute, that person's not perfect, but I still like them. and I could grow to love them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's kind of where I come from. I don't remember the conversation that you're referring to that I had with this person, but I've had many conversations with people about this subject. And I think ultimately what it comes down to is that if we black and white it like that, we step into, like I said, that territory of shame and believing that we're
Mm-hmm.
not whole or valued if we don't feel self-love.
Right. Or even valuable to someone as a partner, right?
Right.
Or as a friend. We can't show up for someone else unless we're willing to show up for ourselves first. Well, mm, as a recovering people pleaser, I can tell you, I showed up for a lot of people in my life way before I showed up for myself. Way before. Pretty much
Right.
continually. So that habitual thinking, was ingrained in me at a very young age, and it was only through a lot of therapy where I had someone holding space for me to kind of explore ideas around that, where I could see that it's harmful to me,
Hmm.
right? People pleasing doesn't sound harmful. It sounds like a really great hobby. It's a great way to spend your time. Go out and people please. Make everybody else happy. Fantastic. But it's only in recent years through therapy that I've kind of come to grapple with, okay, that has been at the cost of, my health, my mental health, my physical health, my energy, my resources, my time, my space, my other relationships sometimes. So that's when, we have to like step into setting boundaries and things. But I guess my point is that as a people pleaser, I experienced a lot of love coming at me, right? And it was helpful to me in many ways because I experienced that mirror of how other people saw me. So I started to value myself more. And then I was able to move out of the people pleasing habit and say, what do I need in this? Do I have the resources, time, and energy to expend here?
Hmm.
Should I be saying no instead of yes? Or maybe instead of yes? So yeah, I think therapy and coaches, can be those people. Friends can be those people. Um, Caring relatives and partners can be those people that mirror back to you. Hey, I value you.
Hmm.
You matter. And it's hard to watch you when you exhaust yourself to do for others, right? It's hard to witness that.
Hmm.
And only in hearing that do you kind of stop and go, oh, you mean there's another way?
Right. And so does that mean that all of the relationships that you had before where you were in love with other people,
Hmm.
you weren't really in love with them?
Oh no, I was super crazy in love with them. Of course I was.
That's my point.
Hmm. Exactly.
And so I think, the other thing that comes up for me too is this. And by the way, thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. I really appreciate you being so vulnerable with me and with the audience. That's beautiful. I think the other thing that comes up for me too, and this is a note that I made, is that um, oftentimes when we engage in self-love, we're seen as needy and desperate versus having our shit together, right? Um,
Hmm.
and I think, or maybe I'm reading that backwards. I don't know. I have a note here saying needy and desperate versus having our shit together.
Right. Well, the perception is uh, that requiring the self-care makes you a snowflake. It makes you
Hmm.
weak. It makes you incapable. Get your shit together, toughen up,
Right.
you know, pull your big girl pants on and, you know, man
Right.
up, all the tropes that
Right.
are
Exactly.
ridiculous.
The damaging and hurtful tropes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Right. So, the do the work for yourself so that you can come into this relationship with me and be valuable to me in some way, right?
Mhm.
It's very damaging stuff. I think you read it right.
Well, yeah, well, it's good to know that you feel you agree with me on that, because I think, I mean, ultimately, what comes up for me here is this idea that regardless of where we might be on our journey to self-compassion, awareness, love, etc., I still feel we are capable of loving other
Hmm.
people and ourselves. And I still feel like that is meaningful and it's real and it's true.
Hmm.
And I guess I want the audience that's listening or watching this to understand that no matter where you are on your journey, the love that you have to give is expansive and magnificent and beautiful. And not only that, but the love that you have to receive. I mean, you deserve the love of the universe. You deserve as much love as there is in the universe. And the the damaging and the hurtful messaging that we
Hmm.
see so often today is contradictory to that. And the questions to ask yourself, the questions that I ask myself are, am I doing the work? Right?
Hmm.
Am I doing the work, whatever the work is for me? Because the work is different for you, it's different for everybody.
Right.
It's, the work is as individual as there are individuals in the world. So I feel like as long as we're doing the work, I feel like, there's love there.
Hmm.
And I'll go so far as to say, and I know you and I have disagreements about this statement, but I would go so far as to say that everybody deserves love. Period.
You're making me sound like a bad person.
No, 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 no. Well, I understand why people don't agree with that. But
So,
for me personally, if I don't feel that way, then I feel a bit like I'm playing God, because then I'm
mm,
thinking, okay, this person deserves love, but this person doesn't. Right?
hmm.
I mean, I don't want that responsibility.
So
I don't want that role.
I need to address that so that people understand my perspective. So in that uh, work that I've been doing on myself to feel worthy of receiving love and to feel worthy of creating love for myself, while doing that work, the worthiness piece really showed up for me in terms of being more discerning about who I invite into my circle, who I want to attend to, who I want to be in relationship with, and whether I had one partner or many partners at the time, or one friend or many friends at the time, it didn't really matter. Um, what mattered was that I had to be more mindful about being in alignment with those people. So, who is deserving of my love? Humanity, yes, because you're a human being, sure. But that only goes so far, right? And so, for the people who I encountered who were hurtful, the people that I encountered who sexually assaulted me, the people that I encountered who were uh, filled with hate, um, not so much. I'm going to withhold my attending to them, my interactions with them, my inviting them into my circle, at least until I have some inclination that there would be some healing involved or some growth involved. Like, for example, if I was running a course, I wouldn't necessarily say no to anyone, right? Like, if they want the material, access the material, and I will lovingly share it with them. But on a personal note, on a personal level, I wouldn't lovingly share myself with them, right? Until
Right.
I have an indication that we're in alignment,
Right.
or that we're in enough alignment that healing and growth can take place, right?
Right.
So it's not that I don't have love for humanity. I do. But I also recognize that my my resource of love, while it is infinite and expansive, doesn't have to be kind of, disseminated willy-nilly to everyone.
Right. And
Right?
I
I had to learn that lesson. That was an important lesson for me to learn.
right. And
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you shared that with us, and I'm glad that you've learned that lesson, because I think that's the next piece to this puzzle is that that's self-love too, is understanding and recognizing
Hmm.
who you want to connect with and how, and what that's going to
Right.
look like for you, right? I think that's really, really important here. Absolutely, 100%. And I think your discernment, the finding that discernment and understanding it, the boundaries that we've talked about before in previous podcasts, and
Hmm.
and setting those boundaries, healthy boundaries in place. That's all part of love. It's all part of loving, right? Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I think that's beautiful. I think that's gorgeous. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for listening. um, yeah, so I think that's pretty much the message that we wanted to send today, is that if you're out there and you're feeling like you have had some difficulty with self-love, and your concern is that you're not worthy of giving love or receiving love because of that we're here to tell you it's okay, that you can go ahead and do that. You can receive it, you can give it, you can learn about love, you can grow while receiving love, and having someone mirror back to you how they see you in all your gorgeousness and wonderfulness, right? Um, and that it doesn't have to be something you come with ahead of time. you know,
Right,
you don't have to
right.
produce the papers. I have self-love. I am qualified for this
Yeah,
relationship.
that's right. I took the course. Right, exactly. Unqualified for this relationship. Yeah, I think that's a nice way to sum it up. I would agree
Yeah.
with that. I will add that not only is it okay, but it's exactly as it is and needs to be in every
Hmm.
situation. And I feel strongly that we're all deserving of love, and we're all capable of love.
Hmm. I agree 100%. Sorry, I got lost in the moment there. Staring into
Good.
your eyes indirectly because we can't actually look at each other.
Good.
um,
And just one more thing too, actually,
mhm.
in these very difficult and challenging pandemic-y times, just I wonder if maybe this is coming up for us right now too, because of our disconnection from our family and our friends and whatnot. And
Mhm.
if you're out there and you're feeling disconnected, and you're doing the work, um, but you're still feeling like it's not enough, understand that it is, and that you are enough, just the way you are. And you are worthy of connection. And while you may not be able to connect in the ways that you want to right now, I know for me, I'm not, it doesn't diminish your capacity to give and receive love.
Mhm. Yes, and I think just to tack on one more thought is that it's in the act of that exchange that we learn more about how our needs are being met or not being met, and and how we can show up for ourselves, right? So maybe in the experience of the giving and receiving of love through whatever relationships you have, you can kind of really whittle down where it is you need to show up, right? So maybe you have friends that are great with certain aspects of navigating the world with you. They're they like to laugh a lot. They like to go for long walks or hikes or do activities that you enjoy. Um, but those friends aren't the friends that you can connect with on a more vulnerable level, right? And so maybe that's how you show up for yourself, is on that more vulnerable level through journaling, or through, creating something, or through getting real with a different person, or through therapy, right? Allowing those parts to flourish too. So, yeah. The thing about self-love is that I think it's generated through connection and belonging, right? It's not something that we really have the capacity to, like you said, create in a vacuum. So great, fantastic. Love this talk so much. I needed to hear this.
Good. I feel better. Do you?
I feel better. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, right on. Good. Yeah, this feels like an empowering conversation.
it does. It does. Okay, so
Good.
let's wrap it up.
Sounds good. And remember,
Keep it kind.
and choose love. We'd love to hear your comments, questions, or topic suggestions. And remember to subscribe.
And you're invited to join our Facebook group, Empowered Now Relationship Support and Advice for All.
You can reach out to us on our websites at gregmillion.com
and leannemillion.com.
or follow us on Instagram at gregmillion.lifecoach.
And at Leanne Million.